As you're finding sources for your research papers, you should evaluate them to make sure they're credible before using them in your writing. One method you can use to evaluate sources you find is called the CRAAP, or CRAAP test, and it's especially helpful for web resources, like websites or other documents that you find through Google. The CRAAP test was created by librarians at California State University, and each letter in CRAAP stands for a different thing to consider as you're choosing what sources to use. In this video, we'll go through each letter and talk about how you can apply them to your sources. The first letter, C, stands for currency. This has to do with when the source was published or last updated. An old source isn't necessarily bad, but you want to think about your topic and how up-to-date your sources should be for that specific topic. For example, if you're doing a literary analysis of a novel that was published in 1972, you may not need a lot of very recent sources. But if you're researching a scientific topic, like global warming, you may need to use more recently published sources to ensure that your information is up to date. The next letter stands for relevance and asks you to consider how this information connects with your topic. Is this source actually on your topic, or does it just have similar or related information? You should also consider if the information you have in the source is at the right level for your assignment. For example, a reference book aimed at middle school students won't usually be sufficient for a college paper. Additionally, if you're working on an in-depth analysis, basic factual information often won't be enough. You should also make sure you look at a few different sources before choosing which to use in your paper to make sure that this source is the one that's most relevant to your topic, instead of choosing the first source you come across. The first letter A stands for authority, which has to do with who created the source that you're looking at. Ask yourself who published the source, whether it's a person or organization. What are their credentials? Do they have any training or experiences that would make them a credible source on your topic? Are they well known in their field? To find the answers to these questions, you can sometimes click the author's name to get a short biography, or if you're looking at a journal article, there will often be information about the author's affiliations that you can look at on the first page of the article. If you're looking at a web source, you can get some information from the URL. Is it a .com, .org, or .gov site? A .com is a domain name that anyone can purchase, while a .org site will belong to an organization, and a .gov site will be run by the US government. Think about what kind of site you're on and whether that makes the information more or less credible. The second A stands for accuracy. Even though you may not know just by looking at a source if all of the information is accurate, there are a few things you can look at to give you a clue. Is the author giving evidence for their statements? Are there any citations or linked to sources where the information came from? Looking at the sources cited in a work can help you see if it's just a website promoting itself or a well-researched take on an issue. You should also check to see if there are any major spelling or grammatical mistakes, and try to see if the source underwent any kind of peer review process before being published. The last letter, P, is for purpose, or why the source was written. Was it meant to inform, entertain, or persuade you? Is it sponsored by a specific company or product? Does it feature facts, opinions, or advertisements within it? You should also try to see what type of bias the source has. Many sources will include some religious, political, or ideological bias, which doesn't necessarily make it a bad source, especially if you're writing an argumentative paper. It's just one more component to weigh against the other factors. However, if a source is very biased and isn't using factual information to back up their point of view, you may want to choose a different source, or at least find a more neutral source to balance it out with. As you're choosing sources to work with, make sure you consider and weigh all of these elements: currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. If you have any questions about finding credible sources or applying the CRAAP test, please contact the library.